Go.
You go.
All right. Well, um, this is Lindsay. We we met in sixth grade, I
I'm glad
guess,
you remember.
because okay. Then we went to the same middle school.
Yep,
Um,
Westridge.
yeah. How was that? How was middle school?
I don't remember a lot of middle school.
Hmm.
I don't remember a lot of my childhood, but there was some of middle school that I remembered. I just remember getting through it. That's it.
So your childhood
Mhm.
was rough.
Very much. Um, I grew up with a alcoholic, schizophrenic, psychopathic uh, father, sperm donor, who was in and out of the house all the time. um, and he was very abusive. So, I blocked a lot of that out. Um, physically, sexually, and emotionally, it was very abusive. So,
Up until when? Would you say?
um, I peed my pants until I was about 13, because that's how hard he would hit hit us, and so that's probably most of middle school um, was that, and then once high school hit, I had other problems, but he wasn't living with us anymore either, so
How about your mom? Was
I'm
that
very close.
better?
Yeah, very close to my mom. When we were growing up, I blamed her for a lot of stuff just because I didn't know any better. Um, and we were always on Chuck. That's my dad. I was always on Chuck's side just because he planted the, you know, I'm your dad, I'm the best person ever, and you need to me and you are the exact same person and we're alike and you know. So, it wasn't until I was 19 um when I found out that my dad had tried to kill his second wife, and then I realized everything that he had done to my mom. So, yeah. So me and her have been close ever since. Yep.
So, high school.
Mhm.
Is that important? Was that important in your life?
I don't know if high school was important, really. It was weird. Like, I would never set one foot back into high school. I graduated early. I graduated a semester early um, because my boyfriend and my best friend were a year ahead. So they had graduated, and then when I was there my senior year, I was by myself, basically. So I had to get out of there. It just, I always say, like, I was popular, but I was popular in a bad way because I was the girl that nobody liked.
Hmm.
So it was just,
How is that popular?
well, I was popular. I mean, yeah, it was a bad popular. It was the popular isn't like, oh, yeah, Lindsay Morris, I'm gonna kick her ass. Like, that's how I was popular. I was going through some stuff in high school, dealing with some mental illness and trying to figure out where I was with myself and finding out who I was. And I still had diarrhea of the mouth.
Hmm.
And I was honest with people. And so, like, if I didn't like you, I would tell you type. And I pretty much didn't like anybody. So, that.
Okay.
So that got me in a lot of trouble.
How do you think West compared to South?
I feel like the people at South were nicer. Even though, I wasn't liked, but like West was just mean. I felt like I knew I didn't fit in at West. But I had a better chance of fitting in at South. But West was just every day I went home, I had to find a way to get out, basically. Where at South I didn't have that feeling of going home and trying to think of how I could kill myself.
Do you want to talk about that at all? Your suicide attempt? Or?
Yeah, we can. I don't mind talking about any of that stuff. The older I've gotten, it's just, it's something that happened, and I've dealt with it. When Chuck always tried to kill himself, and what he always did it for attention, and I never did it for attention because I didn't want the attention. But it was mostly I didn't know how to do it. It was just one night I was very upset, and my mom had remarried, and he's a great guy, but he had all these tools in the house. I found a couple nails and some screws and some knives, obviously, and I tried to cut myself. I made myself bleed, but it didn't work. I've since got them covered, my scars covered with tattoos. There was one time when those fences were at the top. They have like the barbed wire and they're wrapped around, and they have the spokes that come out. I did try to hang myself on those once, where which I don't recommend doing that, where I put my wrists over and stuck my wrists into the barbed wire and then let myself hang for a little while, but that didn't work either.
When did you start drinking?
When I started drinking, my high school ex-boyfriend always blames himself for it because he was a senior and I was a junior, and I always said that I wasn't going to drink because, Chuck was an alcoholic and I had that in my family and I didn't want to be a part of that. Well, he was like the star basketball player and he drank, on the weekends, and so I went over there. I had a couple Smirnoffs, and I got drunk and had a hangover for like 3 days. But I really didn't start drinking until I was 20. And it wasn't bad at all. I was drinking once every 3 or 4 months, maybe, and I wouldn't get drunk. When I was 21, I had a fiance, and he was 28, and he was an alcoholic. He won't admit it, but he was. And so, he was always drinking. But me, I rarely drink. It was at the point where, I had a bad day at work, so I'm going to come home and have a drink or two. And then I was living in Arizona at the time, and then when I moved back here, me and my girlfriend started going to Raw a few nights a week for happy hour. And so we'd go and we'd get drunk, and eventually that's when my borderline personality disorder came out.
And how would you define
borderline?
Borderline.
Yeah, so most people think borderline personality is having split personalities, which it's not. That's not borderline. The way I found out about it best was there's a book called I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. So you have this feeling like if you're in a relationship with somebody and you're fighting and you're arguing all the time and you're like, I hate you, but please God, don't leave me. Like you have this tug of war within yourself. You have your mood. Your mood isn't stabilized. you don't know what to do for a lot of anything. Most people walk around on eggshells because they don't want to upset you. When my borderline personality came out, I found the Lilac Center, and they're a women's based borderline personality disorder therapy house. And so I did trauma therapy and my DBT therapy, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, my individual therapy, my EMDR therapy. So borderline personality you can grow out of the older you get, like as long as you're given the skills for it, which is the DBT and the trauma therapy and the individual therapy and all that, you can age out of borderline personality. So like right now I'm borderline personality in recovery because I don't have a lot of those symptoms anymore. When it did come out, I was violent when I was drinking. Um, I wasn't taking my medicine. I was doing a lot of things that I wasn't supposed to be doing, basically.
Do you take medication?
I take a lot of medication. Um, when I was younger, I was self-medicating. Um, I was prescribed antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, um, and I was self-medicating. I would only take them when I could remember or when I felt like I needed them. And so it was getting to the point where the two that I was on, when I'd been off of them for a little while, the voices in my head were getting louder. That's when I started getting worried about the schizophrenia. It had just gotten to the point where I couldn't self-medicate anymore. So I had gone to my psychiatrist, and she gave me another antidepressant that, if I went 3 days without taking it, I became violently ill. And so it kind of got me on more of a schedule. I've since stopped taking all that medication. I'm on different stuff now.
What do you want to talk about?
You want to talk about my recovery?
Do you want to talk about your recovery?
I love talking about my recovery.
Okay.
I love talking about my recovery. So I'll go into the whole story. So, yes, when I was drinking, and then it had kind of gotten under control, and then I met my ex-husband. I was drinking, but not so much. And when I was fighting, I was still drinking when I was in fight camp, but I was not drinking anywhere near a large amount. At that point, I've always classified myself as an alcoholic since I was about 20. I've always known I was an alcoholic, but I was a high functioning alcoholic. And I still always, up until the day I left for rehab, I still considered myself a high functioning alcoholic.
Can we go back?
Yeah.
So, but from what you put on Facebook, I'd say like the defining moments that you seem to have written about. Like the earliest I remember was a car accident.
Yes. So, when I was living in Arizona, and my high school boyfriend had moved down there with me, and
Why'd you go to Arizona?
I was born in Arizona, and when I was a junior in high school, I decided I wanted to go to cosmetology school. And my mom didn't want to send me to cosmetology school where I was going to work at like a Great Clips for the rest of my life. So she wanted to send me to a good cosmetology school. And we happened to find one in Scottsdale. So I'd always wanted to go back there. I always wanted to go to ASU, but college was not something that I ever wanted to do. So I chose cosmetology school. So I was living in Arizona. I'd finished my hair school. I was assisting at a salon, and my boyfriend from high school had moved down there with me. And we had left the gym one day, and I don't remember anything after 79th and Indian School. So we had gone 55 blocks, and I don't remember a minute of it.
You were driving?
I was driving. I had just bought my Mitsubishi Eclipse Spider convertible. An illegal Mexican in her Chevy Silverado was going 55, and she ran the red light, and she T-boned us. And so Eric, in the passenger seat, saw her coming and grabbed my head and pulled me over to him. Yeah, she went towards the driver's side, and she T-boned straight on. The door hit the steering wheel, curved in. The steering wheel saved my legs, and the firefighters had to use the jaws of life to get me out. And all I remember is waking up in the middle of them getting me out, and I was screaming. And Eric was there telling me, it was okay, they were getting me out, and I had no idea what happened, and I went unconscious again, and I woke up in the hospital mad because they'd cut off my favorite pair of workout pants. Yeah, so basically she broke the left side of my pelvis in 3 places, broke my collarbone, and I have since had 4 hip surgeries. So I've had 2 on the left, and then 2 from the right. I have fake labrums in each hip.
Pain? Have you had a lot of pain from that?
Not anymore. A decade later, now that it's all fixed.
Yeah, so for a while?
Yes, I went through a hellish 8 years.
So, opioids.
No.
That was never a problem?
Opioids was never a problem. I've never liked pain meds. I've never been a pain pill person. I hate pain pills. I went through all 4 hip surgeries without pain pills. But I did drink more.
So then between that and your recovery, what's the next biggest event?
The next biggest thing was my divorce. That was the next big thing that escalated it.
What about boxing?
Yeah.
Where does that fit in?
That fits in. I started boxing when me and my ex-husband met. And I started at Title just for a workout. And one of the trainers there, he was looking for more girl fighters. And so I thought that would be fun. And joined. So I was fighting. I spent a few years fighting.
What have you done for work all this time?
Everything. You name it, you list it, I did it. I spent a lot of time working at gyms. I was working at Tidal, Orange Theory Fitness. That's where I did a lot of my conditioning at. That's one of the things about being bipolar and borderline and having an alcoholic mind is it's very hard to hold down a job. So you have a lot of paranoia, like, oh my God, they're gonna fire me. They're gonna, and then you quit before you get fired because you're worried that they're gonna fire you anyways. So I've gone a lot of different routes. I've spent a lot of time in college. I only have 15 hours left to get my bachelor's. Right now I'm working hospice. I've been in hospice for a year. That's also hard, being in recovery too, working hospice. I spent a long time drinking when one of my patients died. Dealing with the death of a patient.
So your bachelor's, would that be nursing?
Psychology. Yeah, I don't want anything to do with nursing. So my plan now is to finish my bachelor's in psychology, and then I can get my personal training certification, and then I can go work in a treatment center, a rehab center, a treatment center. And like where I went, I had the woman who taught the exercise classes in the morning, and she taught the nutrition classes, and she did all that, but she was part therapist too. And so she really made an impact on my life when I was in rehab. So that's one thing that I really want to do for other people.
Okay.
Okay. So today I'm 80 days sober. I've lost 50 pounds. The reason why I went to rehab was earlier this year, I ended up in the hospital. I was hospitalized because I was having a really bad pain in my right lower abdomen, and they couldn't figure out what it was. And so I ended up having hernia surgery because I thought it was a hernia. I ended up having 2 colonoscopies, an endoscopy. I ended up having my gallbladder and my appendix taken out because they weren't sure if that was it. I was having all kinds of pain, constantly in the bathroom. I couldn't eat. I was so nauseous. I was just having all kinds of problems. And finally, I found out I had liver disease. And I had swollen up. I was gigantic. I don't know if you've seen that picture. It was horrible. Yeah. And I knew I was dying, but I didn't know what I was dying from. I just knew I was dying. It was odd, because I was very honest with everybody. It was quick, because once I had my gallbladder and my appendix taken out, and a lot of the swelling in my face had gone down, and then it was a giant turnaround. It was immediate, where it was just everything exploded. Like, my face was larger. I mean, it was awful. And so, finally, once I got to the gastroenterologist, he finally was like, you need to go to the liver specialist.
What did your drinking look like?
Yeah, so I was drinking a handle a day.
How much is that?
Right, for those who don't know what a handle is, I wish I still had one. It's almost like a gallon
of
vodka. And it was cheap vodka. Like, I was driving to Missouri to get the $10 handles.
So one of those a day.
Yeah. With anything I could find. Pop, juice, water, straight.
All day long?
All day long.
Morning to night.
The minute I woke up until I went to sleep. And it had gotten to the point where I was waking up about 5 o'clock to go to the gym. And I had to drink before I was going to the gym because the tremors had finally set in. I was having withdrawal. It would take 7 hours for me to withdraw. But that didn't start until, the beginning of August. And I went to rehab the beginning of September. So I made it all that time without tremors or withdrawals or anything.
Have you had addiction with any other substances?
No.
Just alcohol.
Just alcohol. And we all have addictive brains. So
all the people?
Most people with addiction have addictive brains, right? So when, when I went to rehab and I went cold turkey, I immediately started smoking. So now I have cigarettes. Now I'm smoking cigarettes that I have to try to cut myself off of from too.
You didn't.
But smoking really helps when you're coming off, when you're coming off of alcohol.
Can I ask, you've had a lot of things that seem expensive.
Yes. Yeah.
But how are you financially?
I'm very blessed.
With help?
Yes.
Family?
Yes. I'm not ungrateful about it at all. But, I'm trying to milk it for as long as I can because I'm trying to get money in my savings and I'm trying to do all of that because now, I'm not spending that money on liquor.
What happened to your dad?
So, Chuck, last August, relapsed. He'd been sober for 2.5 years, and he relapsed again. And I was drinking heavily at the time, because I was going through my divorce and all that fun stuff. And he chose to blame me for his relapse, because I wouldn't talk to him. I rarely talked to him. I didn't agree with what he was doing, who he was, and he decided to contact me and blame me for his relapse. And that was when I told him, that I was done talking to him, that I wish he'd hurry up and die, and that was it. I have yet to talk to him. I haven't talked to him. It's been 14 or 15 months.
Do you know where he is?
I don't know where he is. I know he was homeless for a while. I think right now he is living off the state. I went into rehab thinking that I was my father, but I left knowing that I wasn't.
So your recovery.
Yes, so my recovery. Yeah. Okay, so I'm 80 days sober. I've lost 50 pounds. I go to a meeting every day. I was very against AA with the first 2 weeks I was in rehab. I think it's a cult. I think it's still a cult.
But you like cults.
I like cults.
Yes.
Yes. But it has been helpful. The program has been helpful. But I don't depend only on the program. So, staying sober is my choice. It's my choice to pick up a drink or not. But the program does help with that. I'm also on naltrexone, which is a anti-craving drug. So I take, that twice a day, and that helps. So, everything's going good. I'm back to working out 3 times a day, looking to get a fight early next year. I'm able to be present. I'm able to enjoy life. Does it suck? Yeah. Being sober really sucks sometimes. It really does. But it would be worse if I was drinking. So, that's how I try to remember it. I'll never be a normie. It's just not possible. Normie? Yeah, we call them normies. But I'll never be able to drink like a normal person. So, these guys helped me. I took him from his alcoholic owner, and I didn't, I don't want him to go through that. I don't want him to go through that anymore. It's just, it's like kids depending on you to stay sober, basically. So, but I have a ton of support. I was very blessed to have a very good support system with my family and everybody. So I have tons of friends. That's one reason why I post everything on Facebook. Just because I want people to know that you're not alone. When it comes to it, if you need help, there are people out there that you can contact. So that's a big thing for me. I wish I'd had that before I got sober. So that's one of my biggest things, is letting people know that there are people out there and that they're not alone when it comes to recovery.
Why did you go to rehab in Tennessee?
Yeah, I went to Journey Pure in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Rehab had never been in my vocabulary. I refused to go to rehab. Rehab's for quitters. But I actually had a very traumatic incident at Cottonwood Springs. I don't know if you've heard of Cottonwood Springs. There are rehab treatment center here in town, and I actually had a American Horror Story mental asylum situation there. And my neighbor, she places youth in treatment centers here in town. And I explained to her what I wanted in a rehab center, if that's where I was going to go. And she found it immediately. She knew of it, and it's a trauma-based rehab too. So that was one reason why I chose it. They focus on coping skills and your trauma and the reasons behind why you drink. They give a lot of education, so it's been very helpful.
So how many times have you been to a rehab?
That was my first time.
What about the one here?
Oh, yeah. I went in there for information on their detox.
Okay.
And then they held me in a room for like an hour and wouldn't let me leave. Yeah. So I ended up having to call my ex-husband to come pick me up. But yeah. So no. I've never been to rehab. I just went there for information. But yes, this was going to Journey Pure in Tennessee was my first time in rehab.
And how long were you there?
I was there for 31 days. I got there on September 10th, and I was let out on October 11th. So, we had classes 4 times a day, 1 meeting a day, 1 exercise class a day. But we had all kinds of stuff. Equine therapy, adventure therapy. We were in the middle of the woods. So, it was a good place. No phones, no computers, no TVs. We barely had clocks. So, yeah, it was a no distraction type of treatment center.
Did you have help paying for that?
That was, luckily, I have my insurance through my job, and since I'd already had 2 surgeries this year, all my stuff was already met. And all we had to pay was $1,600 out of pocket. And my stepdad very eagerly handed that over. So, yeah. Which, very surprisingly, it's about a $45,000 treatment center. And we were surprised because I work for a Catholic organization, and so I have Catholic insurance. And so we were really surprised the Catholic insurance paid for it.
And your job let you do it and come back?
They told me I probably wouldn't have my job when I came back. But when I got home, there were 2 girls that were out, and so they needed help with picking up patients. So I'm the one who got all the many blessings.
Did your mom drink?
No.
Did she have any mental disorders?
Not really.
So it all came from her dad.
Most of it came from Chuck's side of the family, yeah. Chuck was one of 8 or 9 kids. So far, 3 of them have died of cirrhosis of the liver from alcoholism, which was my plan. My plan was to die of cirrhosis in my 50s.
Have you tried weed?
I've never been a fan of smoking weed. It makes me tired. But my brother's always smoked weed, and he was the person that I first smoked weed with. And when I came home from rehab, when I came home from rehab, my little brother told me, he was like, "Why don't you smoke pot? It'll make you not drink anymore." And my thing was, well, yeah, weed's not a gateway drug until you go to rehab, No, I've thought about smoking pot, but it's almost like a lot of people in AA consider that a relapse. And so then, you have to quit and start over again.
Can we talk about your marriage?
Yeah, we can talk about my marriage.
Okay, so how'd you meet?
This won't make me look very good. Just gonna forewarn you. I don't mind talking about it. But I'm just gonna forewarn. So we met at the gym. Yeah, I got a good marriage story. So we met at the gym, and we were friends for about 6 months. He had actually called me and asked me out once, but I was seeing somebody else. And so one morning at the gym, he was talking to me, and he was like, "Oh, you know, I'm fine. I just celebrated a birthday. And so I was thinking in my head at the time, I'm like, oh, 'cause I was 23. I was 23, and I was thinking in my head at the time, oh, if he's under 40, I'll go out on a date with him. And he said, well, I just celebrated my 37th birthday. So I'm like, oh, sweet, you know, we can go out. And so we went out. We went out on our first date. I don't remember anything he said because I was so entranced with him. And we had an awful, tumultuous relationship.
He's a firefighter?
He's a fire captain, yeah. KCMO Fire Department. Yep. He's on 28 years.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, but he told me he had just celebrated his 37th birthday. We were together for the first year, and that was just, the first year was awful. He did a lot of stuff, like, the first 2 months we were dating, he had called me on the phone, and I guess he didn't like my attitude, so he blocked me for like 4 days, and then one day I finally got a hold of him, and I had driven over to his house, and I had like barely put my car in park by the time I'd gotten out, and I was like, you think I'm crazy? I'll show you crazy. You know, and then he acted like he didn't do anything wrong. That was his normal, where like if he did something, he wouldn't call me for like 3 to 5 days, and then he would call me again and act like nothing happened. But when he told me about his 37th birthday, you know, I had asked around at the gym, because I was friends with the front desk girl, and she was like, no, he's lying, he's 47. I was like, no, he's not, you know, and I asked him repeatedly. And he always was like, no, I'm 37. And, you know, that whole first year and a half, he hid his wallet from me. He hid his wallet from me, but he played it very good, because if we'd go out to a Chinese restaurant, he'd be like, oh, I'm the so-and-so, which matched his 37 years. You know, so he lied about that.
Okay.
So a year and a half into the relationship, a girl I went to South with knew who he was. And she said, well, he used to date my now sister-in-law, and he's older than he says he is. So he was 10 years older than what he had told me. So he had really turned 47. We had celebrated his 48th birthday together, not his 38th birthday. And then when I found out, I got in trouble for meddling in his business, and he didn't talk to me for like a week because I was meddling in his business. So basically, long story short, he was really mean. He was not nice. He would laugh at me when I cried. He didn't understand a lot of the borderline personality stuff. You know, I would take one step forward in therapy, and I'd come home and take 2 steps backwards. He didn't realize a lot of the abuse I had when I was a kid, and he had a lot of trauma from his childhood as well. He's half black, half Spanish. He grew up in Spain with his dad, who was in the Air Force, and his dad was 20 years older than his mom too. And after a year or two, his dad left his mom for her younger best friend. So, and he was married over a dozen times, his dad was. Yeah.
Dozen?
Yeah, so he had like this whole weird complex thing, but like he doesn't think he has any issues. But he would laugh at me when I cried, because he would throw out the, well, until you've scraped somebody off of the highway, you know, you don't have any reason to be crying. So he would throw like the firefighter, oh, I've seen this. You don't have any reason to be crying. But, so it doesn't make me look good, because we were together for 3.5 years, and I met somebody. And so I started seeing him. So I had 2 boyfriends. So I had Leo, my now ex-husband, and the other guy. And they didn't know about each other for a year and a half. When my now ex-best friend contacted Leo and told him about what I'd been doing for a long time. And so Leo's answer to the problem was to get married, because he thought that that would give me what I wanted and tide me down.
Is that what you said you wanted?
That was what I wanted. Yeah, I wanted to marry him, but he wasn't giving me the things that I needed, so that's why I went and found them somewhere else.
So the idea was you get married, and then you're gonna stop seeing the other guy?
Right. So when Leo said, we're gonna get married, I stopped seeing the other guy. We'd been together for 5 years. And so when we got married in Florida, well, 2.5 months later, when Leo asked for a divorce on my birthday, when we were in couples therapy, because we decided we needed to go through that for me cheating on him and this huge, the huge problem that it created. Well, then I went and called the guy that I had cheated on him with for so long. And I got caught. By Leo. Because we were at a hotel, and Leo had this thing after when he said, let's get married and this whole thing, and I moved into Leo's house, he put a camera in the living room that faced the front doors so he could watch me coming and going. He put a tracker on my phone, and so that's how he found out. So anyways, yeah, so we were at a hotel, and he had called me that night, and he knew where I was, but I had lied to him about it. And so the next morning, I had this bad feeling, and I got up about 6 o'clock, and when I left the hotel, he was already off shift. And when I left the hotel, I turned right in front of this car, and it turned out Leo had called me, and he was right behind me. He was the car that I had turned out in front of when I left the hotel. So that was a big thing. Obviously that was a big thing, and he kicked me out, and so I went and got an apartment. So I ended up moving back in, and we tried to work it out for about 2-ish months, and that was it. He couldn't deal with it anymore. So that's when he kicked me out for good, and then we still kept seeing each other, and then he filed for divorce, and then we still kept seeing each other, and then divorce got final, and then we still kept seeing each other. But that was when my drinking slowly just escalated.
So you dated for like 5 years before you were married?
Yeah. We were together 5.5 years when we got married.
And that whole time you didn't live together?
We lived together about 3 times.
Okay.
So, yeah. So when he first asked me to move in, it didn't last very long. Probably lasted maybe a month. And he was on shift one day, and me and my mom moved all my shit out, and I moved into an apartment. And then...
So that was your decision.
That was my decision.
At that time.
Yeah. And that was about after 2 years. And then...
What was the reason at that time?
That's a good question. I don't remember. I know it wasn't working. It just wasn't working out. But then something happened, and I moved back in probably a year later. And he thought I was cheating, and that was before I had cheated on him. And he thought I was cheating. We'd gone to the bar one night, and he showed up. I was talking to one of my friends, and he showed up, and he thought I was cheating on him with this guy. I was just talking to him. And so we ended up driving back to the house, and he threw all my shit out on the driveway. And so that was enjoyable. But the thing with living with him was I had to pay rent. And he called it rent. I had to pay rent. He didn't share the bedroom with me. I lived in the guest room. All my stuff was in the guest bedroom. I didn't get to use his bathroom. I had to use the hallway bathroom that I shared with his daughter. So then when I moved back in, when we were going to get married, he did clean out half of his closet and gave me a couple drawers in the bedroom. He kind of shared the bathroom with me. I still had to pay rent. and then I had to pay for my portion of the health insurance.
Okay.
No, that's not
No.
okay. No. Like, you make
Right.
you make a 6-figure salary.
Oh, well, that makes
I make
sense.
less than $20,000 a year.
Okay, when you put it that
And
way.
you're gonna make me pay $150 for my portion of the health insurance that you're paying for? Like, give me a break, buddy.
Was the affair, like, what were you missing from your relationship with him?
Like the emotional side of it, the physical side of it.
That's everything.
It was everything.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty much everything. But the guy that I'd had an affair with was also in recovery. So, you know, I was drinking every day with this poor guy who was in recovery. But he, you know, I always said, like, if I could blend him and Leo together, that it would have been perfect. But, you know, I couldn't do that. So.
Had Leo been married before?
Oh, yeah, that's another thing. So Leo had always told me he'd never been married before. His daughter, he was not married to his daughter's mother. They weren't even together when she got pregnant. And he always told me he'd never been married before. Well, when we were in Florida filling out the application for our marriage license, I was like, well, I'll fill out your portion of it. And he was like, no, I'll do it. And so we sat down, and I'm standing behind him, and all of a sudden, I'm like, why is this motherfucker marking annulled? And I said, why are you marking annulled? And I said, you told me you'd never been married before. And he goes, well, it was annulled, so it doesn't count. And I was like, it does too count. Like, what are you talking about? It doesn't count.
I mean, isn't that what they say? Like,
you were still married.
Right, but an annulment, compared to a divorce, an annulment.
Right, an annulment is like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. But when we came home after the wedding, because his mom didn't go to Florida with us for the wedding, and I said, Julia, he told me he'd never been married before. She goes, oh, yes he has. She and her kids lived with me for a while Leo was, you know, out on base, or because he was in the Air Force. So wherever he was, I think he was living in San Diego, and his wife at the time and her children moved in with his mother. So, like, okay. Like, I understand I'm not a saint, but he's messed up himself as well. But that's another thing, you know, that I told him the other day. You know, I'm not a drunk anymore. And it sucks that now, you know, I have to live with those consequences that I made while I was drinking, that I have to live with them now while I'm sober. You know, and that's not enjoyable.
And was your drinking, is that something he blames a lot of your breakup on?
Yeah. Because that was one of his things, you know, after he filed for divorce, and it was, well, we can talk about getting back together if you go back to the gym, if you lose weight, if your drinking gets under control. You know, and it finally got to the point where he couldn't stand it anymore. This last year, like over the summer, he was just disgusted. Which I don't blame him at all. You know, and it was one of those things where if I needed him, I couldn't really call him. Like, the weekend before I left for rehab, I was like, can I please see you? And I never heard from him. You know, and I went to rehab not hearing from him. Until my last Monday in rehab when I got a card from him. And I don't even know how he found out my address or where I was at. So, but, you know, I can't use drinking as an excuse for a lot of my behavior. I mean, like, you can, but then that's just using it as excuses. So, like, I made the decision to do that. would I have done that if I hadn't been drinking? Probably not. But, and now I have to live the rest of my life without my ex-husband. Without being with my ex-husband. So, that sucks. But it is what it is. Can't take that shit back. But it sucks. Just like I told my ex-husband, I was like, now I have to live my life incomplete. Isn't that punishment enough? So, there's a lot of punishment for those mistakes that you make while you're drinking. And it's not worth it. It's not worth it at all.
Since you say, like, the relationship with them was lacking emotionally, physically, what is it about him that you want to stay with him?
I mean, we are better friends. We get along really well. Especially now that I'm not drinking and I'm not crazy psycho, and so, like, I have my mind set, but, like, we do get along really well. And I love my stepdaughter, and so...
Did he drink?
Yes, he drinks. He's supportive in certain ways, but I'm also trying to show him, because that was what we did when we hung out. We'd go to the bar, we'd go out and drink. And so it's for me trying to show him, like, hey, we can still do that stuff. I just won't drink. But he is the biggest threat to my sobriety. But I think it's almost the chase. And that's how it is for a lot of girls is, like, I'm still not over the fact of I'm worth it. I'm still getting to that point where I am worth it. And I'm not a doormat anymore. But it's the fact that, like, oh, somebody doesn't want me all the time, but let me hook on to you constantly.
Well, the plan for this, although it's a very loose plan, probably won't happen. As I say, I want to do a follow-up in 5 years. So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years sober. What I would like to see myself in 5 years is I'd like to be not here.
In Kansas?
Yeah, not here in Kansas, but, working at a treatment center somewhere. That would be my ideal situation.
Do you have a particular place, state?
Well, that's, me and my ex-husband still talk about moving to Florida when he retires in 2 years.
Is his family in Florida?
No.
What's
no.
Florida?
We've just always been in love with Florida. He grew up in Madrid by the beach, so we always, the beach is just where we want to be.
Have you been to Spain?
I have not been to Spain.
Does he speak Spanish?
Oh, yeah.
Do you speak Spanish?
I know enough. I took 4 semesters at JUCO. Obviously I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, my 5 year, I would like to be in Florida at a treatment center. And Journey Pure has a lot of treatment centers down in Florida. So.
That's where you went?
That's where I went to rehab. I went to Journey Pure in Murfreesboro, but the company is Journey Pure. Yeah. So that would be my ideal situation. But you never know what's going to happen in 5 years.
So, 15 years.
Oh, God. How old would we be? 47?
Is that right? Yeah.
47 is going to be a different story. Because, to be honest, I don't know if I even want to be sober at 47.
Why?
I don't want to live a long life. And that's why I was excited to die in my 50s. I just see so much of it. I've seen so much of it throughout my work, like, I don't want to get Alzheimer's. I don't want to have kids. So I don't want to be that person that's in a facility that has no family, that's getting neglected, getting treated like crap. Like, I know what goes on in facilities.
Why don't you want to have kids?
I've never wanted kids. Ever since I was a kid.
Don't like kids?
I don't want the responsibility. You know, the boys are enough. Yeah, and it's just, I've never wanted kids. You know, I love my stepdaughter, but we did not get along a long time.
How old is she?
She's 16 now. She just turned 16. And I just, you know, and it was always this thing, like, me and Leah, oh, she has soccer games this weekend, or she has soccer practice tonight. Like, I don't want to deal with that shit. You know, like, I don't want to be responsible for somebody, like a human being. And I hate kids. Like, I love my niece and nephew, but I can't stand to be around them a lot, you know, for long periods of time. But I've never liked kids. It's just never been my strong suit. I would be that kid, I would be that parent in the line at the grocery store whooping their kid's ass because they're not paying attention. Or like, my kids would be on leashes, and, you know, and it's just like that type of thing that I don't want to be a part of. So, yeah, I mean, when I'm 47, if I'm still sober, I'm still sober. If I'm not, I'm not. You know, but, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen then?
At that time, you don't still expect, like, your mom to be alive?
Right. If my mom is still alive, yes, I'll still be sober. But I know that minute that she dies, like, all hell is going to break loose. You know, and then, to me, I won't have a reason to live at that point. So, you know, my ex-husband will be almost dead, and it's just, you know.
How old would he be then?
If I was 47, he would be 70, 71.
That's pretty old.
Yeah, he's 55 right now.
Does he smoke?
No.
Healthy?
Yeah. Eats healthy, works out every day.
So he'll probably make it to 70.
He'll probably. Yeah. He probably will. I try not to future trip. That's one thing that they really teach you right now, and so, you know, don't future trip and don't have expectations, and so it's just one of those things where I have to live one day at a time right now.
Your favorite serial killer, huh?
Ed Gein.
You have, because the cameras can't see, there's Charles Manson on the wall, and there's Ed Gein on the wall.
Yes, and those are the original Life magazines from, Ed's is from late 40s, early 50s, and Charles is from whatever that, you might be able to see it, but I don't have my glasses on, whatever that date is up there. The 70s probably, I think, 60s or 70s. Yeah.
So why is he your favorite?
I guess I just, there was just something about him, the first book that I read about him, like I said, he's not very well known. Like, you know, a lot of people who follow horror or serial killers know about him, but like somebody like you, most people don't know about Ed Gein, so he's kind of like one of the forgotten ones. He just wasn't very violent. He could be, but so he was just sick in other ways, and I really think I like him. Like, his mental illness was really strong, and I really like anybody with mental illness. That's one reason why serial killers fascinate me, because I like to know the mental illness behind the part of it, you know.
Well,
Anything else?
I suppose that's all.